Now we get to the more juicy news that I will have analysis for. So, it might not even be the analysis that I would have initially thought, because of some additional circumstances surrounding this news story. But obviously the story itself is pretty much how you would expect it to go. That's 7:55. Okay. So in Oklahoma, there is a school superintendent. I don't know if it is. Oh no, it seems like it is for the whole state of Oklahoma. It says the Oklahoma Superintendent of Schools, which means it's for the whole state. This guy basically runs the school districts and stuff. You know, he's like the top education guy in the state for like directly administrating schools under the like state secretary of education or whatever. Anyways, from Baptist News Global, this is where my analysis of unexpected stuff comes in. Oklahoma Superintendent of Schools says Tulsa Race Massacre wasn't due to the color of anyone's skin. This is not a satire article, this is real. I've seen video of this, in fact. I don't know if they have the video on this news article, because I read a couple paragraphs, but I didn't scroll through it all the way. But this is unfortunately a real thing that was said in earnest, insofar as you can consider anything a conservative says in earnest, by the superintendent of schools in Oklahoma. Like, he said this as though he believed it, and there is no, like, no reason to believe that he's not acting as though this is his political belief, you know? And, like, the reason I'm prefacing that with all that uncertainty is because, obviously, I'm not inside of anybody's head. But, you know, I think we can safely infer in this instance that this guy is fucking racist. So from a paraphrase from the state superintendent, it's okay to teach Oklahoma school children about the Tulsa Race Massacre. Just don't tell them it was motivated by the color of anyone's skin. I don't think that's a 100% exact quote, but I do recall him saying something to that effect in the video. It was pretty fucking stupid. Here we go. Let me scroll down a little bit. I want to get to the significant parts of this news article, because it's kind of interesting to me that this is coming from a Baptist newspaper. Let's see. Here we go. The conservative Republican was asked how teaching about the 1921 murder of hundreds of black citizens of Tulsa doesn't violate his ban on teaching what he calls critical race theory. You know, conservative fear-mongering about teaching that racism exists. His reply: I would never tell a kid that because of your race, because of the color of your skin or your gender or anything like that, you're less of a person or inherently racist. That's blah, 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 blah. Yeah, basically, he doesn't answer the question. He talks around it. And then the news article goes on to say, by historical facts, residents of the Greenwood neighborhood of Tulsa, dubbed the Black Wall Street, were murdered by armed white vigilantes precisely because of the color of their skin. University of Oklahoma social scientist Samuel Perry tweeted in response to a report of what Walter said of the race massacre, my wife, a teacher, and I attended this event tonight. This was just the tip of the iceberg of idiocy that Walters spewed. Driving home, we felt so angry and embarrassed we live in a state where people elected this ignorant and incompetent clown. Last month, the superintendent called for promoting Christianity and quote-unquote Western heritage in every classroom, including displays of the Ten Commandments, according to a report in The Oklahoman, another state newspaper. Or, I say state newspaper specific to the state of Oklahoma. See here. I wonder if there's any more. Okay, so there's. He claimed he'd been misquoted. Context, out of context, context. One clip, two clip, context. I don't know. The analysis that I wanted to get to doesn't revolve so much around the the story itself as much as it does the where the story is coming from and being reported, which is to say that it is in a Baptist news outlet, like Baptist Christian. And I didn't expect this, partially because, you know, Christianity in the United States is so heavily associated with conservatism and conservative beliefs and things like that, that, you know, I might have expected this to be either covered in a different way, or I would have expected this Baptist newspaper to just not talk about it at all. You know, those two things wouldn't have surprised me, but this most certainly does. And I think this brings out a little bit of the political optimism in me, believe it or not. Something as small as this, you know, because my dad is a former Baptist. Was raised in the Baptist church, like in a predominantly Baptist community where they had a Baptist church. His family went to church, etc., etc. And he's actually been sort of my window into the evangelical angle of politics. You know, we hear about evangelicals and stuff all the time in American politics because they're such a huge block of the American population. And when I say evangelical, I mean Christians who aren't Orthodox and who aren't Catholic. Basically, any of the post-schism, post-Reformation, not post-schism. Post-schism would be Catholicism and Orthodoxy. Like, any of the post-Reformation strains of Christianity are considered to be evangelical. And that's a huge proportion of the United States population. In fact, it's most of the religious people in the United States. At least a plurality of them. And he's been telling me about these sort of disillusioned evangelicals who were in the sort of Trumpist cult and whatever. Or in like a very right-wing political environment that was very cultish, and eventually broke out of it and sort of started their own blogs and stuff. He follows a blog of one guy who was an evangelical Christian in these sort of crazy right-wing spaces, but then like broke free of his programming and now dedicates a lot of his time to writing this blog about the crazy sort of shit that evangelicals get up to in this country. And it makes me think that this newspaper might be being run by some of those same people. So, you know, people who come from a, you know, religious Baptist background, but who are, through one way or another, sort of disillusioned and broken away from the occult influence of modern Christianity. And, you know, as much as I want to say not all Christians and whatever, because that's true, it is inherently the case that religions lend themselves to very cultish behavior, you know? Just by function of being institutionalized, dang it, I died. Just by nature of being institutionalized and legitimized superstition, you know, religion will do that to people. And I don't know how this is going to pan out, but I think with time we're going to start seeing more of these people, because lately it's funny, lately a lot of what's been happening is the sort of secularization of evangelicals. They're sort of becoming more and more detached from the religion. They're leaning harder and harder into the sort of opiate of the masses interpretation, where religion can mean any and everything. And it seems like the new mainstay of American conservatism in terms of religion are Catholicism and Christian Orthodoxy, rather than evangelism. At least on the rhetorical front of things. Obviously, the evangelicals still, by far and away, represent the largest proportion of American voters out of any religion. But, you know, especially with Trump having lost 2 elections, he's getting up there in years. eventually he's not going to be here anymore. And I think that, especially when you have forces that are working like this seemingly liberal progressive Baptist news org is working. And when I say liberal progressive, I mean like the good kind of progressive, not the like centrist liberals who are one step away from becoming Hitler. You know, when news outlets like this exist and are actively trying to de-radicalize and deprogram cultists as vigorously as they can, then I think we're going to start to see the evangelical bloc, you know, the religious elements of the American population might stop leaning so hard to the right, if that makes sense. They're going to sort of... They might still be conservatives. I'm under no delusion that every religious person out there is going to, you know, start becoming a socialist and whatever. Because even back in the days when religious arguments for socialism were a mainstay of leftist politics, you know, there was still a very large religious conservative bloc. It is going to undoubtedly be the case that, you know, once Trump is gone, so too will be the Trumpists. You know, like there was an entire political term. I had to, believe it or not, I had to learn this term in political science. Trump spawned an entire right-wing populist movement akin to, you know, most of the populist movements in Europe. Granted, there was nothing necessarily unique about it. It's centered around a cult of personality, but it was significant enough in American politics that it merited its own term in American government textbooks. And I read that in American government textbooks in high school and in college. Now that term is actually going to lose meaning once Trump is gone. It's just going to become, oh, you know, it's just right-wing populism. There's no longer going to be any semblance of a charismatic figure that can hold the movement together, because Trump made it very clear over and over again. Only I can fix it. I alone can fix it. You know, he tied the whole movement not to the ideas that he represents, right? But to him as a person. Like a cult, like a religion. And once he's gone, so too will be the religion. At the very least, in terms of its, like, I don't know, uniqueness and original doctrine or whatever. You know, kind of like how Christianity, if you're going for the most ultimate, like, no true Scotsman purist type of argument, Christianity died with Jesus, right? Because after that point, everyone's just going with the interpretation of things that he said. They, you know, weren't able to ask him directly. He's dead. The same thing eventually is going to happen with Trump, and there will be a lot of people who might still maintain some of the weird delusions about Trump as a person and whatever, but they're not going to be as actively pulled into the far right, I think, by virtue of, like, no glue holding them there. You know what I mean? This is me repeating myself over and over again, but I think if I had to put it succinctly, Trump is a sort of a force akin to glue for the right wing in America. And once he's gone, that glue is no longer there. So people aren't going to stick to the far right as much. At least not people who are into it, like, more casually, you know? Because a lot of Trump supporters, a lot of people who voted for Trump were kind of like normies, if that makes sense. You know, there were people who weren't super politically involved beforehand and might still not even be. You know, a lot of the people, even the folks who were at the January 6th insurrection, a lot of them didn't vote. You know, the 3%ers, some of them don't participate in politics, except to go out and be insane every now and again. So there's hope for America yet, I think. We're going to have to get through a very rough patch first, and obviously a better day will not come if conservatives can help it and if neoliberals can help it, because they're going to put the most they're going to scientifically craft a formula with which to determine the most ineffectual possible human being and set of policies that they could prioritize for any given government position. Like if you are looking if you're looking for the strategy that will win you an election, all you need to do is ask neoliberals how to lose an election, and then do that exact thing, and you will win. Because their idea of how to win an election loses elections. But anyways, not to get too far off track, you know, pulling it all the way back to the original topic of discussion here. It was just really nice to see that this Baptist news org was reporting in a progressive sort of bend the like insanity of the Oklahoma school superintendent like saying, oh yeah, the Tulsa Race Massacre was not motivated by race. Or at least him trying to get around saying that and failing. You know? Because this is why I added a lot of those qualifiers. A lot of right-wingers know that they're not just wrong, but, like, evil. You know? It's a team sport to them, so they, like, don't care about the harm incurred onto people, especially of marginalized groups. In fact, they relish in it in many cases. That's why I find a lot of like Nazis and stuff making jokes about haha 41% haha. They, you know, any bad outcome you can picture, they want it by virtue of it making their political opponents upset. So, you know, it's entirely possible that the school superintendent, what was his name? Walters. It's entirely possible that Superintendent Walters actually knows that what he's saying is wrong, and it like doesn't care, and is just doing it anyways, saying that stuff anyways, and trying to force schools into eliminating all mention of race from history curriculum, just because it makes his political opponents upset, and that's like, it's like a game. It's like, imagine you have a win condition. It's like, oh, when you eliminate all mention of racism from schooling, you win. And that's what right-wingers are trying to do in some cases. Some of them might just be evil and relish in their evil acts. But either way, that's what's going on here. And I think it is thoroughly commendable, the actions of that social scientist and his wife, the teacher, for going to this event, even if it's, you know, their job to show up there. Kudos to them still for showing up and like telling this guy off, basically. You know, because for the longest time, and well, I mean, I say the longest time, really it was only about a year or two, and it's still going on now. Right-wingers were kind of like dominating the local politics space, you know, going to school board meetings and county board meetings and making a gigantic fuss. And it's really great to see that now there are people on the left who are doing that. You know, whether they be liberals or progressives or socialists, you know, there needs to be an equal and proportionate response to the right-wing strategy here. You know, like, you can't take the high road. Taking the high road means you get Nazi Germany.